Hello and welcome to the Two Ace Podcast, the podcast designed to help you manifest your Two Ace mindset. My name is Josh Brooks and my one focus is success through the art of discipline and flow. I hope you enjoy the episode. Now let's get right into it.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time of day it is you're joining me. I hope you're having a good one. And today I'm joined by Robert, and he loves introspection just as much as I do. So, Robert, how are you doing today? Just want to introduce yourself a little bit.
Awesome. Thanks. So first of all, thanks so much for having me, Josh. This is great. Hi, everyone. My name is Robert. I live here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'm an author. I also have a day job at a bank. I've lived here my whole life, and just super thrilled to be on and excited to talk about some interesting questions and introspection.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I like that. I like your book, the idea of your book. What's the title of it again called?
Yeah, the title of the book is called The Book with No Answers: Unlocking the Power of Questions for a Better Life. And it's I guess it would be in the self-help genre, but I like to think of it more of as a self-coaching book. I don't do a lot of the work. You do most of the work as the reader. So you really have to want to take action and want to provide some of your own answers if you're going to read the book. But it would typically be in, I guess, the self-help genre book.
Nice. Yeah, I really like that. And I love how you said the power of questions as well, because I feel like there's so much more than meets the eye to questions. You know, the way you structure it, the way you answer them, how they're answered, you know, who you ask them to. There's a lot of questions that people always asking other people, but they're not asking themselves. And maybe we can dive a little bit further into that.
Yeah. So I think the real power of questions are the questions you ask yourself. I mean, I think, everyone, when you think of people you enjoy talking to, typically they're people that ask you a lot of questions. I don't think you enjoy hanging around with someone who just does a monologue for 45 minutes straight that doesn't ask you any questions. So I think asking other people questions is a great social kind of characteristic to have. But where I really like questions is when you ask them to yourself, because I'm willing to bet everyone on this planet has problems and issues and uncertainty in their lives, and they're looking for answers. And the best way to find answers is to ask questions. So if you want to find your own answers, the best way to do that is to ask yourself questions. And the beauty about when you ask yourself questions is you find answers based off of who you are, what you've been through, your circumstances, your aptitudes. It kind of, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, every answer is filtered through your entire life. And I think the reason maybe some people avoid it, because power is a double-edged sword, is that sometimes you're not thrilled with what the answer is. And in the book, I go through a lot of questions, and every single question in that book I've asked myself. And I was not thrilled with a lot of those answers. So power is definitely a double-edged sword. It is good because it enables you asking yourself these questions enables you to find answers. Problem is sometimes you're not thrilled with what those answers are. And I think sometimes that's what will make people be hesitant to be introspective and spend that time with themselves.
Yeah, definitely. It's I think it is really important to be introspective. You do unlock just another level. When you're able to talk authentically, not only to other people, but on your own, and really be true to yourself in the questions that you ask and the answers that you provide. It's like, there's an extent to lying to other people, but lying to yourself is like what you're trying to achieve by doing that. You have to make sure that you're being authentic, being true to yourself, and I'm all about that. I like believing in self-mastery, and authenticity is the highest vibrational state, right? So you got to answer them truly. Is there any a one question that you thought maybe was like a pivotal moment in your life that you asked yourself for, that you uncovered?
I think a lot of questions. I found a lot of power in asking myself a lot of questions and kind of not putting too much pressure on one particular thing. But a couple of questions that really stood out to me when I kind of asked myself that and even when other people have asked themselves this question. There's two really big ones, and they happen to come in the same chapter in the book, which is interesting. First one is, what does success mean to you? So I think a lot of people are taught what success is, or they think they know what success is, or they see what success means for other people. But I don't know if anyone, I shouldn't say I don't know if anyone, but not a lot of people sit down and think, what does success mean to me specifically? Forget about the cars, forget about the house, forget about the family even, forget about everything. What does success mean to me? And I think when I finally started to ask myself that question, it made it much clearer what I was trying to achieve and what I was trying to get to. Because suddenly I realized that success did not mean a $150,000 Porsche. So why would I ever possibly chase that? And success did not necessarily mean the biggest house in the biggest neighborhood. So why would I possibly be chasing that? However, what success did mean to me was being able to have a lot of freedom in my life, whether that be freedom with the actions I take every day, financial freedom, just not feeling backed into a corner and stuck. So that's the type of things that I chase, is being able to be free with my time and money in the future. So that allowed, but I would never know that if I didn't ask myself, what does success mean to me? I'd just be chasing what everyone else is chasing. So that was a really big one. And then the next one, and it links very closely to it, is, what do you want your days to look like in the future? So 20 years from now, which for me will be at the age of 53, what do I want my day to look like? So September 12th, 2044, what time do I want to wake up? What do I want to do in the morning? Do I have kids? Am I driving them to school? Am I picking them up from school? Am I driving to work? Am I staying home from work? Am I even working? Do I have a wife? I already have a wife, so hopefully I still have one. What's my interaction with her? Do I get to hang out with her after work? Can we go for a walk after work? Are we planning our next vacation? Like, what does literally my day look like? Because when you think about what your day will look like 20 years from now, you know what you'll look like and what you'll be like 20 years from now. And then that gives you a target to start chasing towards. It gives you something to work on. I think where a lot of people go wrong is they don't know what to work on. You're in university right now. One thing you'll realize is when you get out of university, they kind of just say, do whatever the hell you want. Have fun. You want to go to China, go to China. You want to get a job, get a job. You want to do nothing, do nothing. Nobody cares. So that thinking, what does success mean to me? What do I want my future to look like? It gave me something to work on. It gave me something to work backwards from. And it gave me something to do and something to chase.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good way of putting it. It's always chasing your future self, almost your future hero, in a way. It's like, but what I want to ask is, when you do get to that 53-year-old self, will you then be chasing your 73-year-old self?
Yeah. So one of the beauty things about not only introspection but constant introspection is that you realize the answers to your life change. So there's a very, very famous quote, John Maynard Keynes, I don't know if he takes economics, you would have heard of him. He goes, when the facts change, I change my mind. So as you grow and as you go through different things, the facts about your life will change. Who you are will change. What you want will change. So it's very unlikely that the things I want today are the things that I will want 20 years from now. It's very unlikely. But if I continue this path of introspection and constantly check in with myself and the people around me even, and the people that are important to me anyway, then I'll be able to create this kind of dynamic path forward. And I won't be stuck in, well, I wanted this 10 years ago, and even though I don't want it today, I better still keep chasing after it. You won't do that because you'll constantly be checking in with yourself, and you'll understand that sometimes, sometimes things were cool to you 2 years ago and they're not cool to you anymore. Sometimes things seem like they were important 5 years ago and you realize they're not important anymore. So if you continue this journey, continue this path that I think we're both on, then, 20 years from now, it probably will be very different. And then I'll want something different 10 years from then. And that's okay. It's okay to be dynamic. It's okay for things to change. Not everything that's true has to be true forever. But where people will go wrong is they'll be stubborn, and they'll dig in their heels, and they'll, cling to something that is no longer true. And I think that can lead to some unhappiness. I think being willing to change your mind and be in a dynamic path, I think is a good way forward.
Definitely. Yeah. You're so eloquent with it. So, you can tell you've written a book on it.
Thank you.
So,
Appreciate that.
so you're saying you sort of your motivation for sort of being in the state working on yourself is for that future self to be enjoying it, to sort of
Exactly.
enjoy like the fruits of your labor in the moment right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sort of with that in mind, I'd like to see what how do you compare discipline with motivation?
hmm Yeah. I would say motivation is a tool to establish discipline.
Mm.
So I think it's very difficult to be, if you think of someone who's disciplined in your life, maybe they wake up at 5 a.m., they go to the gym, hit the showers by 7, breakfast at 7:30, work by 8, home at 5:30, dinner, walk, read books, yoga, bed, do it all over again. Very disciplined person. They didn't just wake up one day and be that person. And they also didn't wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to establish this incredibly regimented schedule and I'm going to stick to it forever. I think at some point that person was sick of the person they were before and needed a spark, some sort of motivation to kickstart the lifestyle they now have.
Mm.
So what they had was a big drum of oil. But oil doesn't do anything if it sits by itself. What they needed was a spark. I call that spark motivation. To light that drum of oil on fire and create the life they have now. And motivation can be anything. Motivation could be a book, motivation could be a podcast, it could be a quote you heard, or it could just be you sick of your shitty life and wanting to do better.
Mm.
I don't know what motivation is for everyone, but I think motivation is something you need to break that inertia, start the gears, and with time, develop discipline. It takes time. Someone who's disciplined didn't become that overnight. They had the motivation to do so, stuck with their habits, and now they're a disciplined person. So I think motivation comes before discipline, but motivation is not a sustainable path. Motivation is not, you can't hope to be motivated 10 years straight.
Yeah.
It's okay to need some motivation to get going, but if you want to have a lifestyle you like, you need discipline to keep it going for a very long time. That's the tough part. Discipline's the tough part. Anyone can get motivated for a day.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about balance, isn't it, at the end of the day? It's like if you do have such a regimented schedule, you sort of disallowing yourself any freedom to enjoy, to even experience something that can provide you with motivation. Because if you've got every single second of the day lay out to the T of, you've got to do this, then this, then this, you don't have that free time to be creative, to explore life and find more motivation or more reason to do what you want to do. And you also mentioned inertia as well, so I want to dive into that as well, because how do you view inertia in that aspect?
Yeah, I think inertia. Another word for inertia is comfort, in my opinion.
Okay.
Just being happy with what you have. I think especially when you grow up or when you live in a society that's like kind of like first world, whether that be England, Canada, if you kind of just wake up, do your job, don't spend too much money, don't bump into the walls too much, you can have a pretty good life. You could eat, you can have an apartment, get a couple beers on the weekend. You could do pretty good just by like kind of phoning it in every day. To me, that's inertia. To me, that's comfort. Some people are legitimately happy with that, and I'm okay with that. Some people pretend to be happy with that, and that I'm not okay with. And I think inertia is the comfort you have with just doing whatever it is you're doing today. That's the inertia.
Yeah.
Inertia is the unwillingness to change and the fright, perhaps, of change. And I think that's the toughest part to break through. I think, and this might be a hot take, I think it's easier to break inertia when you have a shit life. Because you're like, what am I holding on to? What am I clinging to? What am I scared of losing? Let's just go for it. If you have a pretty good life, then you have more to lose. Then you have comfort. Then you have this fear of, I better not ruffle too many feathers because I got it pretty good here. So let's just chill. So when I think of inertia, I think of comfort, and it's very easy to just ride that. Some people ride that their entire life.
Yeah, yeah. I love how you instantly went with comfort because that's what I was hoping you'd say in a way. Sort of like I believe that uncomfortability inspires productivity. So if you're
Hmm.
always just being comfortable, you're just basically scared of failing, and you're not really going to get anywhere if you just, like I like the analogy of, you wake up and it's cold outside, and you're just in your bed and it's nice and warm, and the alarm goes off at I don't know 7, um, and you keep clicking snooze for 3 hours. It's now 10 o'clock. You've not done anything. Yeah, you've just been comfortable. You've been in bed, nice, warm, and cozy, but time's still ticking. Nothing's
Hmm.
happened. You've made no progress. All you've
Hmm.
done is, in effect, waste that time because most people, there's 3 hours. There's something you can be doing productive in that hour, or those 3 hours rather. And I feel like by putting yourself outside of the comfort zone, you know, number one, bringing that wake up time earlier to 6 or 5 or 4, waking up, getting straight out of bed, you're instantly uncomfortable. Then adding another level of uncomfortable is going outside straight away or getting in like a cold shower or an ice bath, and instantly you've just woken up and pursued something uncomfortable, and you're gonna pursue the rest of the day like that.
Yep. Yeah, yeah, yep. Finding the comfort in uncomfort, I think, is a good skill to have.
Mm. Finding the comfort in uncomfort.
Yeah, just feeling like when you're uncomfortable, you have this feeling of this is good. Just like I'm uncomfortable right now, but I'm comfortable knowing that this is good and something's happening for the
Yes.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I heard a quote the other day from one of my friends actually. We were talking about success, and he said that success is not the goal, it is progress.
Yeah.
And I hadn't heard that before, and
Yeah. Yeah.
he said it as if it was something that I should have heard, and I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, yeah, you're so right. It is. I can't believe I've not heard that.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like if you're, go back to that analogy. If you're in bed, um, in the morning, all under the blankets and stuff, and you're constantly thinking about, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this. You're just thinking about the goal. Just do it.
Hmm.
Make the progress. Do something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like in those sort of situations, being introspective is really crucial because if you're like, there's going to be a reason, right? And you have to ask yourself why. Like, if your reason was big enough, you would do it without hesitation and you would get it. Have you heard the can't think of the word of the phrase it's called. It's like if you ask a bunch of people, oh, what's the percentage chance of you making $1 million in the next month or the next year? They'll all say like, oh, 0%, 1%. And then they're like, what if your family would all die after it if you didn't? And then they'll all up their percentages to 50, 100, I'd
That's
definitely do
right.
it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and the only difference is the reason. You have to have a strong enough reason to do what you
Yeah.
want to do. And you have to ask yourself what that reason is.
Yeah. Exactly. I think many philosophers before our time would call it your why. Like
Yeah.
why are you doing something? Why did you wake up this morning? Why are you going to work? Asking yourself, pretending you're a 6-year-old. Why? And that can get exhausting and difficult, and I understand. But when you have a why, very famous quote, when you have a why, you can overcome almost any how. When you have a why, then you can figure out anything. All of a sudden, $1 million doesn't sound so crazy if my fucking parents are going to die. I better
Yeah.
get it together. So all of a sudden, once you have a why, you don't worry so much about how am I going to do this, how am I going to do that. You can just overcome anything because you have this thing to fall back on.
Mm, exactly. And I was on Instagram earlier. I saw on one of your posts or one of your highlights, you put a quote from your book actually, and it was something
Hmm.
about like the villain versus hero. I think it was the villain says the world hurt me, so I'll hurt it back, whereas the hero says the world hurt me, so I'll make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. And do you want to just explain a bit more about that? I really like it.
Yeah, well, that's very timely because that would be their why, right? Every hero has a why, has something in their life that's happened to them, and it becomes their why. It becomes their reason for trying to do better in the world, for trying to make a change. So, for example, in that quote, the villain doesn't have a why. All they know is that I've been hurt, so I'm going to hurt. That's all they know. However, a hero has gone through some sort of trauma, pain, uncomfort in the past, and thinks to themselves, I'm not going to let this happen to anyone again because that happened to me. And they now have a why. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a crazy, painful thing to become your why. For example, a lot of software engineers have been plagued by using shitty software and decided, I'm going to make better software because I'm tired of using shitty software. That can be their why. It doesn't have to be this wild, painful thing. Or for some people who have maybe been abused as a child or had their dad leave them when they were 6, that can become their why. And because of that, they're now a social worker or a therapist. Or they just become a great dad because they had a shit dad and they go, you know what? That's my why. I'm going to be a great dad when I have kids. So there's a massive spectrum to your why. It could be something as low level and small as driving your career and being like, you know what? I went on a boat cruise one time and the captain was a jerk. So I'm going to be a captain and I'm going to be a great captain. And when people come on my boat, we're going to go on a cruise and we're going to have a great time. And every tourist is going to love me. That can be a why. Or when I was 7 years old, my dad punched me in the face every morning, left, and I never saw him again. So now when I have kids, I'm going to be the best dad on the planet.
Well, that's a
That
bit
can
of
be your
a
why too.
that's a bit of a different one, isn't it?
Bit of a different one, but they're both your why. They
Yeah.
both are part of your origin story, and they both drive your action to the future, regardless of how far on the spectrum it is.
Hmm. Do you think the spectrum has limits?
I think I think they just apply to the situation. I think they just apply to you in your life. I don't listen. Almost every action has come from a reason. Almost every time you do something, it's for something. If you go to your job, it's because you need to make money. If you're going to see your friends, it's because you want to have a social interaction. If you're going for a run, it's because you want to feel better about your body and to be healthier. Everything has a why, everything has a reason. And like I said, some of them are super small and some of them are gargantuan. But they're all part of your origin story and they're all a moment in time that has made you realize, you know what? Because of this, I need to go do this.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's is there any questions that you ask yourself on like a daily basis?
Um, I would say what one of the funny parts of being introspective and a questioner is that you just subconsciously question things
Mm.
constantly. Like how often do I sit by myself in a corner and ask myself questions? Rarely. But almost everything I do, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, I'm going, why am I doing this? If I'm going to work tomorrow, why am I going to work? If I'm going to go for a run, I'm going, why am I going for a run? If I am going to hang out with some friends for the weekend, I go, why am I going to see my friends? As opposed to why am I doing A when I could be doing B? Or
Mm.
should I be doing something else? Or is this helping me with my path towards what I want to do? Um, so I think it just becomes kind of part of your psyche, and it kind of becomes part of your like daily actions of you almost never do something without saying, why am I doing something? It kind of just is just part of me now. So I don't really think about it as much
Yeah.
consciously so much as it's like just part of everything I do now.
Yeah, I get you. I was referring more to like in like journaling or something like that because I journal
Hmm.
every day and then I have like
Nice.
systems. So I ask myself certain questions every week and every month. But then sometimes like
Great.
in the day I write questions down or an answer if it comes to me. So I was wondering if you had sort of a similar thing to that.
That's great. No, I'm not nearly as structured. I kind of wish I was now that I hear you do it, but I'm not nearly as structured. I don't know. I just kind of have it built into me. I don't know when you write a book, you ever heard of that thing when you write something down, you'll never forget it.
Hmm.
When I wrote the book, all of those questions are just like tattooed in my brain. So I think I'm kind of subconsciously asking myself these questions and they've kind of just become part of who I am. I don't know if I need to. I'm sure it would help, but I don't know if I really need to spend so much time sitting down by myself journaling as I maybe did need to before I wrote the book or before I formalized kind of this methodology.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair enough. I guess
Yeah.
your book in itself is your sort of the culmination of journal entries and all the questions that you maybe previously asked yourself or that you constantly find coming up in your brain. So
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. It must be cool to sort of have so many questions going around in your mind. It must be entertaining to say the least.
It is, but here's one warning that I write explicitly in the book is that questions can bury you and you need to be careful. One of the things I highlight in the book is this is not a philosopher's book. This is not a book to just sit around and ask yourself questions and go, "Oh, this is cool." Like the book is very much action oriented.
Hmm.
And the warning I give people with questions and introspection is that it can go on forever. You can ask yourself a million questions forever. At some point, these questions need to spark action. That's kind of where motivation came in from before.
Yeah.
At some point, you need a spark to say, okay, I think I've gone through this introspective path enough. I think I've got enough to maybe make some changes. I think I've got enough to maybe do something different. Because questions can certainly bury you. Questions can turn you into a philosopher.
Hmm.
And they can make you just be the guy who's very self-aware, very introspective, but doesn't do anything with it. And that's not good either. So I'm very cognizant of that, and I remind myself of that often. Of hey, this is great that you're asking yourself these questions and you're thinking about things deeply and stuff like that, but that's only going to get you so far if it doesn't drive any change.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's sort of links to that curiosity kills the cat.
Mm.
Asking too many questions can be harmful.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yep.
it's interesting though because cats have 9 lives.
Yep.
So I guess what I'm trying to put at is you're saying that asking or being introspective to an extent is dangerous, but it's only dangerous if you don't act on the questions, as in you constantly have these thought loops and you ask yourself these questions and you sort of almost drive yourself crazy. You just keep asking and answering and asking and answering, or maybe answering a question with another question, which maybe drives you more insane. And then that is harmful because you're just sat there just thinking and, thinking too much drives you crazy. So there is a
Yeah.
point where you've got to pull that thought into words, into action, and do something about it.
Yeah, exactly. Not only is it potentially dangerous, it's also just insanely unproductive. Like
Mm.
at some point you got to do something with your life. So using all the work you've done, you're doing all the hard work. You're asking yourself questions that don't take for granted. A large majority of the population never does any of this. Large majority of the population gets up, goes to work. They don't have the luxury of introspection. They don't have the luxury of time and thought. They just wake up, go to work, feed their kids, feed their family, watch a half hour of TV, go to bed, do it again the next day. So if you're able to go through this, if you have this time and ability to have introspection, keep in mind it's partially a luxury. Not a lot of people have this. And also keep in mind, you're doing all the hard work. You're doing all the hard work of digging deep and finding answers. This took me years. The book took 6 months to write on paper, mentally, and in my life. It took pretty much my entire life. You're doing the hard work. Taking those answers and going and doing the action, that's like the next step, and it's not nearly as difficult because you've done all the legwork in the back. You've already found your why, you've already found your motivations, you've already found out who you are, you've already found out what you want, you've already found out all of that. Now just go do it. Be productive. Don't just be Frederick Nietzsche and sit and ask questions and you know what I mean? Like go and take action and do something. That's my big concern, is like the unproductivity that can result from being introspective.
Yeah. Yeah, I like how you say that. It show how do you when was the point in which you realized that? Because the way I'm seeing it is that maybe you were at a point in life where you realized that you were thinking too much and maybe driving yourself crazy, and then you realized, oh, let's take action on that, and then you sort of maybe had like the realization of, you overcame that hurdle.
Yeah, I think, and this is a light podcast. I don't want to get too depressing, but in when I was 23, my brother passed away. He was 32. Um, and I think it's so strange being a human being. You live with the knowledge that you're going to die one day. I don't know if every other animal does this. I don't know if a gazelle walks around knowing it's going to die. But human beings do. But it's kind of this like more philosophical thought until it happens really close to you, whether that be a parent, a sibling, a close friend. Then you realize, oh shit, I know someone very close to me who is now dead.
Hmm.
So this is like certainly going to happen. So when my brother passed away, it wasn't this like everyone dies one day thought. It was, I know someone who I've known my whole life who is now fucking dead.
Yeah.
That's crazy. You can never unlearn that, and you will never be the same after you see that. So kind of after that, and it's not like the next day. This isn't some fucking
Yeah.
Marvel Universe story. But at some point along the way, I realized like, hey, I'm like legit gonna die one day. And if there's things I want to do in my life, I gotta get going. Because not only am I going to die one day, I also have zero clue when. Because I thought it was sometime in my 80s as I, pass away of old age with my family around me. But no, you can die when you're 33, or 32, or 31, or 30, or 29. So it just, really, it just became so real after that point, where it just became very difficult to not do anything.
Yeah.
And if there was any part of me who wanted to do something, I had to act on it. And suddenly there was no tomorrow. It was, if you want to write a book, Rob, you better fucking write that book, because you saw what happened to your brother. That could very easily happen to you. So you gotta write that book. And here's the good news: art lives forever. So your book will live forever. And these thoughts of, oh my God, I'm going to die one day, will kind of calm down, because now your name will live forever in literature. Great job. But you got to get going. You got to start writing. You got to sit down with the pen and a pencil or a laptop and start writing. So I crazy to say the word lucky when someone passes away, but I feel in some sense fortunate that I've learned that lesson in kind of the only way you can learn that lesson. And some people won't learn that lesson until they're fucking 57. And I learned it at 23. So in a sense, I feel fortunate that happened. And that's kind of what sparked what you were talking about of like, hey, enough with the questions. Let's get some shit going here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. It's interesting to. There's a lot more to questions than meets the eye, and it's really interesting to find out someone like yourself who's written a book on questions. It's really interesting to see how you utilize them in a way. it's like it's almost poetic in a way how questions are like come to be. Like there's so many ways to portray like a thought in the way you structure the question, in that you can ask a question in a certain direction and it come across with love, or ask the same question in another tone or in another sort of like structure in the way the sentence is, and it come across completely different. Um,
Mm.
and I'm interested to find out how is that. Have you noticed a change in how you view or how you produce questions? If you know what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, yeah, like kind of like what's the origin of a question and kind of why? Why are you asking the why? So you're
Yeah,
going
I
even
guess yeah.
a
I guess you
step
could
further
say.
back. Yeah, yeah. Um, it yeah, it has changed in my life. It used to be because I thought it was cool. I thought it was just fun
Hmm.
to ask yourself these questions.
It is.
Then I thought it I liked being an introspective person. I thought that was just a good characteristic to have as a human being. You know, much like a video game, you pick what characteristics you have. You just have to kind of work on them. So I wanted to be an introspective person, and in order to do that, you need to be introspective. So I started working on that. And then it came from wanting to have a better life, wanting to do better, wanting to be happier, wanting to be more successful, wanting to be more available to the people around me. Um, in other terms, I wanted to make a change and take action. So that became the why for the why. That became the motivation for these questions. So it's kind of, changed over time in a sense where in the beginning it was fun. Then I wanted to develop who I was as a person. And now it's because I want to take action and I want to have a different life and a better life. Um, so it has evolved over time, and I'm sure it'll continue to evolve. When I'm 70, it might be asking myself these questions because I want to do a recap of my life and figure out kind of what did I do the past 70 years? What almost like a kind of like a rollback in a movie where you kind of look at your past and be like, what did I do these past 70 years? What did it look like? Who was I? That type of thing.
Hmm.
So I'm sure the motivations will change, but they've certainly changed over time.
Yeah. Is there any in particular question that you would ask yourself 20 years ago?
Question I would ask myself 20 years ago. Oh man. Um, I would. I've become a big fan of fatalism, meaning just accepting the odds of like what's the worst case scenario, and that kind of strips a lot of fear away. So, for example, if you wanted to start a podcast and you have a good sense of fatalism, you go, this probably won't succeed. And if it doesn't succeed, what's the worst that could possibly happen? I bought spent couple hundred bucks on equipment that I'll now have to sell on Kijiji. Um, I don't know, like I don't really know what the worst case scenario is. It's not
Yeah,
that bad.
exactly. Yeah.
I wish I had that sense 10 years ago, but especially 20 years ago, of don't be so scared of the future because you're a pretty smart guy, you got a loving family, you live in one of the best countries on the planet and one of the best times in the world. Your worst case scenario is still pretty fucking good. So don't be so I better take the safe route. I better make sure I don't ruffle the feathers too much. I better not bang into the walls too much. Like even if when I was 20, I spent 5 years trying to start a company where I made, I don't know, water bottles that were better than other water bottles. And I tried for 5 years and I failed, and I'm now 25 with a failed company. My life's still pretty freaking good. I still got great parents. I still hopefully would have met my wife. I still have a ton of experience with entrepreneurship. I still live in Canada. I still can go get a job tomorrow. Like, I still got it pretty good. And that's when things went brutal. That was worst case scenario. I wish I thought about that 20 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I wish I thought about that because that would have freed me to take more risks and be less scared of the future and realize that even worst case scenario is still pretty gosh darn good.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Just be present almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
What did you study in school, by the way? What was your favorite subject?
I mean, I wasn't great at school. I went to college here in Canada, and then I went to university at Manchester Metropolitan near you.
Oh, yeah.
I took like business administration and marketing. Again, because I'm like, I better get an education. I better get my degree. I better get a job. I better like, oh, if I don't, oh my God. Um, so yeah, I wasn't a big school guy, to be fair. I kind of just like, I remember I stayed on residence or on campus at Man Met, and from my window, I could see my lecture hall, and I would still skip class. Like, I
Oh,
would still, like, not go, because I'm just like, I don't want to go. I wasn't a great student, no.
yeah. The reason why I asked is because I was thinking that you might have studied English or like philosophy or physics or something like
Oh,
that because
wow.
you're very aware. It's really interesting. It's
Wow, that's very, very kind of you. No, I always liked English class in high school and elementary school, and I always did, like, if I was a C student, I would always get B's in English class or A's in
mm,
English class. Like I'd always overachieve in English class. Um, so I guess part of me that maybe meant I should have, but but yeah, no, I always liked that side of it. I just never pursued it, I guess.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Or even psychology, really. So I found
Mm,
psychology really interesting. So
yeah.
I feel like talking about introspection, you're being in your brain so much. It's important to understand each bit of your brain and how it works. And it's like, why are you asking yourself these questions? Why
Hmm.
why are you asking the why, and why are you asking the why for asking the why?
Hmm.
Then you go into the loop of asking yourself too many questions, and it's at what point do you actually stop, and at what point do you just either just put a full stop on it or
Yeah.
just let it be, um, and just take a step forward, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yep. I think if you're conscious of it, you'll find it. I think
mm,
if as long as you know, as long as you're aware that there is a risk that you could just get into this infinite loop of why and never take action, as long as you're cognizant of that, I think you'll find your line. Because your line's gonna be different than mine, and it's gonna be different than the guy across the street.
mm,
Um, but as long as you're aware of it, you'll find it. It's just the first step is being aware that this is a risk and a potential issue. Um, and then once you're aware of it, you'll know when you're getting too deep. You'll know when you're too far in the rabbit hole, and it's time to come out. Yeah, I think awareness is kind of the most important part there.
yeah. So would you say that sort of like a the most important question, I guess, is the why to ask yourself?
I think that's the most important thing to find, more
Mm,
so,
okay.
is to find your why. Because once you find your why, nobody can tell you nothing. You can't be swayed. You can't. When people go through their lives, there's a lot of temptation, things called honeypots, where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, good job, that's pretty cool. Good pension, oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, a big house I can't afford, that'd be cool. There's temptation along your magical road through life. And it's easy to get swayed if you don't know where you're going, where you've come from, or your why, the reason you're on this road at all. Because if you don't know the reason you're on a road, you'll be like, I don't know why I'm on this road. That road looks pretty sweet. Let's go there. Hell yeah. But you don't know that that road's about to go off a cliff 2 kilometers down the road. So I think the most important part is finding your why, because once you know your why, then you know why you're on your road. You know why you're on your path. And you can't be swayed by temptation. And you can't be knocked off by honeypots and things that look good but aren't actually meant for you and things like that. So I think the most important thing to find here, and I think is potentially the biggest reason for introspection, is to find your why, to find your reason, to find your reason for getting up, for every action you take, for the things you're trying to achieve. Just like, why are you doing this? Because once you have that, it's tough to get knocked off your path.
Yeah. So is your why, is the answer to your why basically your purpose?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your purpose for being here, your purpose for being here, your purpose for your actions, your purpose for the path you're taking. It applies to a lot of things. But yeah, I think that's a good way of going about it. Your why is your purpose. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And just wrapping it up, and wrapping it actually back to the start really, and we're sort of going in that loop. It's I want to ask you, what do you actually think of success? Like, what is your definition of success?
My definition of success is freedom with my time and freedom with my money. And I don't mean unlimited time and unlimited money, but what I mean is the ability to, if I need to be there for my wife, I can do so. If I need to be there for my kids, I can do so. If I want to be able to go somewhere with my wife or kids or parents or sister, I can afford to do so within obvious means. Just like not being backed into a corner, not missing out on things, not not having to be absentee, just being able to go to your kids' football practice, soccer practice, hockey practice, whatever. That's a luxury that not a lot of people have. Being able to, if your wife's not feeling great, being able to take a day off and be with her, that's a luxury that not a lot of people have. And I really want to be around. And so here we go. My why, and the reason for that is because my parents were always around. Played hockey all my life. My dad was at every game. He was at every practice. Played soccer all my life. Both my parents were at every game, every practice. They were just around. They were so generous with their time. My dad is so generous with his time. My mom is so generous with her time. There is no wasting their time. And I want to be able to do that for my wife and my kids. And that's not easy. And that doesn't just happen. But yeah, that's what success means to me, is to be able to be generous with your time and money.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. It's really authentic, and yeah, I really appreciate that. It's been lovely having you on. It's been really introspective. So I've loved talking about questions, and sort of I've loved trying to ask questions about questions. It's challenged me a little bit as well, so it's quite fun. So and yeah, I have loved having you on the show. It's a really good note to end it on there. So yeah,
Awesome. I appreciate you having me. This was a lot of fun as well. The time flew by.
sweet.